Appreciate you spending your weekend with us here on Retire ATL. It's all powered by the Vincent Financial Group. 770-741-0120. Again, 770-741-0120. Always available online, retireatlradio.com. Aaron Vincent is here. Matthew Decker is here. And Aaron, before we took a break, we were talking about a lot of people will give you a call with maybe not needing specific direction like a 401k or a Roth conversion. Some people call and just say, where am I? How am I doing? How do those conversations go?
Yeah, we talk a lot in terms about your retirement planning or your retirement life being sort of like this road that you're traveling on. And if you want to get from A to B well, if you want to get to B well, then you got to know where you're at. You got to know where A is. It's hard to get directions. Hey, do I turn right or left here to get to that point B? Well, if you don't know where you are today at A, it's impossible. And so, yeah, we had some folks in the office just a few weeks ago. I love this couple, and they came in she had tears welling up in her eyes almost just upon walking in the door, and she just knew, and I think that her husband kind of felt the same way, although maybe not as open as she was at first, but just knew there was a problem there, some issue. They were behind, and basically approached us asking us to fix a problem that we found out pretty quick wasn't even there. Mm-hmm. The reality for them was that they'd done a good job working, good job saving, but for them, retirement was this giant mountain, this far off dream, and it just felt too far away, too good to be true. And so around every turn, they kind of just abided by this feeling of it's never going to be enough, never going to be enough, never going to be enough, until they come in to kind of have this conversation about the roadmap, mm-hmm. get from A to B. What do you want to get to? And within just a few minutes of us doing what we do, we realized pretty quickly that if we take a pretty good inventory of the whole situation and take into consideration, everything that was at their disposal from Social Security and savings and everything else that was going on, their retirement actually was well more in reach, probably even earlier than they had imagined. Not only was there not a giant problem to fix, but actually they could probably do it sooner than they were thinking. And gosh, to have those conversations and to be able to kind of course correct and encourage someone with some news that Yeah. Them leaving that day was a good day.
But I imagine for them walking in to the front offices of the Vincent Financial Group, nervous, anxiety, feeling like they've made mistakes. Again, like you said, tears in their eyes. But to walk out with just the confidence and the knowledge to know that I'm okay. I'm making some right. We got some work to do, mm-hmm. but I'm not as bad off as I thought I was going to be.
Absolutely. And not every story is that way.
Sure.
But I will say this. Most people, just by knowing the facts and the truth, without that kind of, because most people that we talk to or that I talk to often, they kind of have this ostrich, bury your head in the sand, keep working, keep saving, hoping and praying it's going to be enough someday, but don't really have any way to assess, is this going to be enough? I don't know, and I don't want the answer. I'm too afraid to find out. Let me just bury my head in the sand and keep working and keep hoping and keep praying. When in reality, as Matt was saying, probably more often than not, they're better off than they realized.
Mm-hmm. And do you see the flip side of that as well, Matt, where somebody comes in and they almost come in like a little overconfident, if you will? It's like, I'm fine. I've got my investments here. They're doing great. I've got my 401k here. I've got my pension here. I know I'm good. I'm just doing this as a formality. And you sit down and you go, whoa, okay, cool your jets a little bit.
Slow down there.
Slow your roll, Tiger.
There's certainly people that come into the office. I will say, though, the common denominator of that sentiment is typically people that don't have their spending under control. Mm-hmm. Maybe they have done a really good job saving. Maybe they've saved, their investments are growing, maybe they've got some businesses, but their expectation for their lifestyle is not actually matching up with, they might have a couple $1 million saved, but if they want to spend $500,000 a year, that's, they're nowhere near where they need to be. And so certainly there are both sides of the spectrum there. I think what we really love doing is working with the people that, they have buried their heads in the sand in a way in terms of looking at the situation. It's kind of that I'm scared to go to the doctor because I don't want bad news.
Right.
But look, if you're scared to go to the doctor because you don't want bad news, but every morning you wake up and you go on a walk with your dogs and you're generally eating healthy, you probably don't have much to worry about it. So you should just go to the doctor.
Yeah,
right. Just go to the doctor.
Put it.
We love working with people like that, where they've faithfully, gone to work. They're that person that shows up on time. They do give their best effort. They save what they can. Their spending's under control. They just haven't really spent the time running the numbers and looking at the scenario. And so a lot of times they do come in a little bit fearful and thinking they haven't done enough. The other conversation, I've done more than enough and I could retire whenever I want with or without your help. That's a much more difficult conversation to have, because you kind of got to be the bearer of bad news sometimes in that situation.
Sure.
But we're willing to do that.
There are also scenarios where, you mentioned all the different things that can go into retirement and planning and all that. But for some of those who don't have their spending under control, another scenario can be, expecting the inheritance. Every now and then we have this conversation. People who they know their parents or whoever else have done really well, and they know that in 10 or 20 years, whenever grandma dies or dad or mom dies, I'm going to inherit X. And so, I'm not really behaving now as I would in my saving and planning life if I didn't expect that inheritance, but I know it's coming, so I'll be good. And hopefully that's the case, but
that's also an odd retirement plan.
It is.
I'll be fine when mom or dad passes away.
And even if it's not like I've got really rich parents, even if it's like, hey, mom and dad have their house paid off, it's worth $750. I know I'm going to get that when they pass. Well, you might, unless there's a long-term care event or some unexpected health cost or whatever else. And so, I just want to throw another one out there. Not having spending under control can be a symptom of those who, it can be bad news at times, or expecting something's coming that may or may not come can be one as well.
Yep.
Mission statement from the team of the Vincent Financial Group: to preserve your assets and build retirement income. 770-741-0120. We're not saying every conversation is going to be all puppies and unicorns and roses and sparkles, but that it's not all going to be like finger wagging and what are you doing? But you need to have these conversations. Let's talk about your budget. Let's talk about your retirement. How can we get you to a place that you want to be? 770-741-0120. Retire ATLradio.com. Inflation, a big point of conversation over the past year and a half now, causing a lot of seniors to rethink their retirement. There's a new Indeed survey that shows that almost a third of retirees are considering going back to work just to keep up with the soaring cost of living. President Biden was on CNN recently, and he was asked about the economy, and he said,
we've already turned it around. Look, the polling data has been wrong all along. But the fact is that if you take a look at what the people have, they have the money to spend.
So do you think that the economy is in as good shape as the president thinks it is? Are you seeing some of these adults that are saying, I might have to go back into the workforce because of this inflation?
That's the number one question that my dad actually asks me every time we get together to talk about his portfolio. Do I have to go back to work, Matt? In fact, that's the only question he has for me. That's it.
Not how's the wife and kids, home and grandkids.
He's up in Blue Ridge. Or I'm sorry. Where is he?
LJ.
He's up in Big Canoe.
Yeah.
Yeah, so my dad and mom moved down from Illinois. They retired up in Big Canoe. And that's the only thing he asked me when we get together. Do I have to go back to work? No, Dad, you don't. Okay, great.
And I'm good, Dad. Thanks for asking.
See ya.
See ya.
Kids good.
That clip from President Biden is, I think that's a shortened version. The question from the CNN news anchor there was something along the lines of, what are your concerns about the economy, or what are you going to do about the economy? The cost of homes have doubled, and inflation and some other things. And he responded there, we have no problem. There is no problem with the economy. But in the longer clip, which we kind of cut short there's a little bit of doublespeak. I wrote it down here. He said, no president's had the run that we've had in terms of creating jobs and bringing down inflation. It was 9% when I came into office. And then he goes on to say, grocery prices are up 30%, more than 30% since the beginning of the pandemic. And he says people are spending more on food and groceries than they have at any time in the past 30 years. So on the one hand, there's no problem with the economy. We've already fixed it. And on the other hand, grocery prices are up 30%, and we've never spent more money on groceries ever in the last 30 years. So I don't quite know what to make.
That's not confusing, is it?
It's not confusing at all. You know what it reminds me of? I don't
Confidence level is high right now. Let me tell you right now.
Very high. It reminds me a little bit of 1984. What did they say in 1984? Orwell's book. He said the party's going to convince you that 2 + 2 = 5. And that's what that feels like right there. Hey, there's no problem with the economy, but also we do know that, grocery prices are up 30%.
But there are people out there that are going, you know what, the economy is great. Yes, I can only afford one bag of groceries now, but things are great. That's almost frightening. So can you take and look at a retirement plan, and because of inflation, because of high prices, because of inflation, shrinkflation, stagflation, all these flations that we hear, can you almost inflation-proof a retirement plan? Is that possible?
We talk all the time about stress testing because there's no way to know what inflation is going to be like in a year or 10 years or 30 years. There's no way to know. We can project, but the reality is that you can plan for anything. That's just the reality. And I do think this is really relevant now. Maybe the inflation concern is the new stock market concern. It's kind of like for years we heard probably more often than not, the biggest concern was, well, what if the market goes down? Is that going to wreck my retirement? That kind of thing.
When inflation was running at 2-3%.
Correct. Yeah. But now that it's a little bit different, now we have a situation where inflation in this case is much higher, and groceries and everything else cost a lot. Well, that's the bigger concern lately. And so, but yeah, to your question, you can plan for it. We can run numbers, and we can say, well, what does this retirement portfolio do if inflation continues to stay at this rate? And what would we do? What adjustments would we make if that were the case? And we can kind of make a model for that. And that, I think, it gives a lot of peace of mind. I mean, the truth is that there are going to be things that happen in your retirement that are unplanned, unscheduled, unknown. It's going to happen for every single one of us. Not for some, not for most, all of us. Something will happen. And how do you know if you're on the right track? Well, we can talk about those kind of things. And I think just having a realistic approach, having expectations that are correct, and not having such a razor thin margin for error. I think that's the biggest thing. If your retirement only works out if everything aligns perfectly, whether it's market conditions or inflation or interest rates or what have you, if your margin for error is slim to none, then yeah, maybe you should be worried.
That's not much of a plan.
That's not a plan.
No.
Right.
That's hoping and praying, I believe is what that is. I love how you put that because it's something I hadn't really thought about
until you said it, which is inflation the new stock market's going to crash? And I love that. I think that might be true because let's just do a little thought experiment. If inflation is running at 5 to 6%, right now the discount rate is around 5.5%. That's the rate at which the Fed will loan dollars to a bank. It's the risk-free rate. So whenever you hear people talking about, I've got a great CD, it's paying 5% or 6%, just realize that that's less than the discount rate. Okay, so you're actually not winning in that scenario.
Right.
But as a general thought experiment, if inflation is going to run at 5 or 6, where are you going to get your return to outpace inflation?
Not a CD.
You're not going to get it from a CD. I went and quoted out the top MIGA products out there, which is just a multi-year guaranteed annuity. Pays you a stated rate for a certain amount of time. The top one I saw was around 5.9%, barely over the discount rate, barely over inflation.
You're just treading water at that point.
You're treading
right?
water. Yeah. I went back to a Kroger ad from 2001. Mm-hmm. T-bones on sale, $3.99 a pound.
Gosh, that'd be great.
I got my Kroger ad yesterday. T-bones, $14.99 a pound. So if you run that inflation for 23 years, that's 6% inflation on T-bones over those 23 years. And so to your point, Aaron, how are you going to outpace inflation without taking risk? Mm-hmm. I think that we need to have a paradigm shift here. We need to change the way that we think about retirement planning because a flight to safety and a flight to low-risk assets can work if inflation's under control. If inflation is not under control, well, you got a problem if your safe money is in CDs at 5 and inflation's at 6. Mm-hmm. You're going backwards instantaneously. And I think a lot of people are seeing that. They're sensing that. They're feeling that. And I don't know about you, Aaron, but when I have conversations with clients, a lot of it is, keep me invested. I need the return because if inflation is going to be 6, I can't be earning 4, I can't be earning 5, I can't even be earning 6. I'm treading water.
What we're talking about here is the prisoner of the moment syndrome. We've all been conditioned to hear about, whether it's CDs or it's money markets for the last handful of years, for as long as I can recall, recently at least. We're hearing about banks paying 1%, 1 point something percent. Maybe you were excited because you got a CD at 2.25, 5 years ago. And so we kind of get conditioned to the moment. We feel these things. And now all of a sudden, you're used to hearing those things and talking in those conversations, hearing about 2%. And then you hear about a 5% or a 5.5%. And you're like, well, that must be great. It's double what it was last time I looked at a CD. So it must be a win.
Which is true.
Yes.
It is double what it was.
And it's
not.
No, it's not. It's not helping you at all. 2 + 2 does not equal 5, to your point a minute ago, George Orwell in 1984. And so anyway, the point is we've got to have a real conversation. Hey, let's all sit down together and let's talk about the facts, not how I feel or my opinion or how you feel or your fears and what you're bringing to the table to cloud the matter. Let's all just talk as adults about what's real, black and white truth, and make decisions based on that, not based on all this kind of hearsay.
To have those conversations, it begins with a phone call to 770-741-0120. Again, 770-741-0120. And I think it's safe to say that come November, Biden wins, gets reelected. We kind of know what we're in for. We've been in this for a couple of years now. I don't think a whole lot is going to change because there's going to be enough people that say, I like your policies. They're not going to change anything. But if Trump wins, it's not like everything is magically going to go back to those 2001 prices.
No, I don't see how it can.
Yeah. So I think we're in this for the long haul.
Absolutely.
I'm not saying the new normal is $15 for a T-bone, but I don't think we're going to go back to, what'd you say?
$4.
$3.99 a pound for a T-bone. Big old juicy T-bone, $3.99 a pound. Sign me up for that.
Is Marty McFly in that DeLorean when you need him?
Back to the future.
So the reality is we need to preserve your assets and build retirement income. Can you sustain continued inflation? You know what's hitting me the most is that shrinkflation that we talk about a lot. You know where it gets me the most? My box of wine. Okay?
Skin smaller?
Yeah. That bag, that adult Capri Sun in that box of wine used to be 4 bottles. Now it's very sneaky. Now it's down to about 3.5 bottles. Okay, still paying the same price.
So my son went to youth camp this morning, and so he was hanging out with Aaron and I this morning, and we were sitting at our conference table. We do a morning meeting every day, and he was joining us. And Aaron shows up with a Starbucks sandwich. What was it? The
bacon Gouda one.
Yeah, the bacon Gouda, and he opens it up. And my son Vincent goes, that looks small. And we look at it and we're like, man. And Aaron goes, shrinkflation, man.
I used to get at least 4 bites. Now it's only 3.
Yeah.
It's showing up everywhere, even in your Starbucks bacon Gruyere sandwich.
Can't get away from it.
Yeah. My 11-year-old can see it. He's like, man, that thing's tiny. What happened?
And you're like, that's my boy right there. He's seeing it.
Future financial advisor.
These interns these days, I tell you what. 770-741-0120, retireatlradio.com. You heard him mention it a little bit earlier. It's a retirement roadmap to sit down with the team. Let's see where you are. Maybe you think you need some adjustments. Maybe you're worried about inflation, shrinkflation, stagflation. Nothing wrong with asking the questions or getting that second opinion. 770-741-0120. Well, speaking of the Biden administration, they do have a new rule that requires airlines and ticket agents to not only show you both the airfare cost, but also the fees that are built into it. Now, a lot of the airlines are not happy with this. They want to sue the Department of Transportation, saying that this is going to confuse customers and they're acting beyond their authority. Well, airline customers were already overpaying over $540 million a year in junk fees. So let's talk about fees here for a second. They're trying to do something about that. Give the administration credit. They're trying to help us out with some of these unnecessary fees when traveling. So, Aaron, when you sit down with somebody and you look at the retirement roadmap, you take a deep dive into a portfolio. The fees, how do you find unnecessary fees that maybe your customers never even seen before?
Yeah, that's a big thing we talk about a lot. First of all, I think it's hilarious that the political speak in this. Oh, wait, if we disclose all the fees, it's going to confuse people.
Yes,
let's
just fees, man. So confusing.
How dare us?
Yeah, let's hold back the truth. It'll be less confusing.
As much as Ticketmaster and SeatGeek can drive me crazy, at least I know how I'm getting gouged.
Absolutely.
They break it down.
Yeah, no, this is a big one. We talk a lot about fees. Because fees, as with anything, are just a function of value. You know, if you're going to pay for something, well, first of all, you better know how much it costs. Mm-hmm. So let's start from there. But secondly, if you're going to pay for something, then whether it's a good deal or not, whether it's a good buy or it's worthwhile, is really contingent upon what do you get in return. So, you know, we could talk about fees and fees being bad, but really it's a function of value. Are you getting what you're paying for? And so we see this a lot in even most of our new clients, if I'm honest with you, they come from other financial advisors. It's just the way it goes. They're looking for a second opinion. They're wondering if things are on track or off track.
Their advisor's retiring.
Their advisor's retiring, or whatever it might be. And so we do a lot of analysis of other portfolios. Hey, what would we do if we were managing this account for you? Is a realistic conversation. And one of the things we find often is that there are a lot of fees. And I'm not saying that any advisor or any money manager is doing this on purpose. So don't hear me imply that. Sometimes that could be the case. Sometimes they just don't even know to disclose it. But almost every time, and I mean almost every single time, people come in, they think they're paying a fee of X when really it's Y, really it's higher, because there are a lot of unknown fees. It's the same case in the airline world. You think you're paying $300 for a plane ticket, next thing you know, you're being charged $450. What just happened? I don't even know.
Yeah.
And
it's confusing.
It's confusing. Yeah.
Yeah.
Those fees.
So junk fees, it's a big deal. And I think my point here is just simply, we've got to first diagnose and find out what's happening here. It's possible that you're paying fees you're not aware of, but you're getting value that makes it worthwhile. It's at least possible. Mm-hmm. But it also may be that you don't even know what you're paying for, and someone is using the fact that you don't know to take advantage of you, and you got to just find out first.
Right.
I had a Zoom call a couple weeks ago where that was the exact situation. Single lady. She owns her own business, super successful, does a great job saving, but also she's like most people. She's in her lane, right? She's really good at what she does, running her business, but she has offloaded the investing side of kind of her world to her financial advisor. She came to us for a second opinion. She's like, man, Matt, I really need help looking through my statement because I know I'm paying 1% in fees. And yet, when I look at my statement, I'm paying 6%, and I can't. Help me figure this out.
Make it make sense.
And we did make sense of it because the funds that were used in the account had a commission attached to them. It's commonly known as A shares. Mm-hmm. A commission to the broker up front. The commission was 5.25%, and it had a 0.25% trail. 5.25% plus. Or 5.75%, 5.75% upfront commission, 25 basis point trail, 6% in fees. I'm like, well, there's your 6% right there. And she said, well, but he tells me he's charging me 1%. He is charging you 1%. He's charging you 1% to sell you that fund. And unfortunately, that happens way more often than it should. That's actually a no-no in the industry. Mm-hmm. You're not supposed to do that. Mm-hmm. But some people haven't kind of caught up with the times. And so it still happens. It's still out there.
I like how you said that, Matt. You said she gave you a call. You had the Zoom consultation. She said something just doesn't feel right. Something is off. So if you're listening this weekend and maybe you have one of those big box advisors, something just feels off. You just have questions. Your needs are not being met. Reach out to the team at the Vincent Financial Group. Take advantage of that no-cost, no-obligation second opinion service. 770-741-0120. Serving all of Metro Atlanta. Of course, they'd love to see you in person at their home office in Woodstock, multiple other locations across the city, but those phone and Zoom consultations always available. 770-741-0120. Matt, Aaron, thank you. Thank you for the education and the information this weekend. Hey, if y'all missed anything, we invite you to check out the Retire ATL podcast. It is available across all podcast platforms. This weekend show, a full archive, all commercial free. One more time, we invite you to meet the team at retireatlradio.com or give them a call at 770-741-0120. For Aaron Vincent and Matthew Decker, this has been Retire ATL right here on WSB.